And my dudes, welcome back to the Twilight Monk podcast. As you know, here on my YouTube channel, I like to add in some time lapse of some artwork so you can actually see some of the development, the process of how the game was made, a lot of the artwork that I did for the game while I discuss the development of the game with one of the developers. In this episode, this podcast, I'm talking with Amy Summers, also known as Ben of Trash. She was the animator on, I'd say like 99%, 95% of the game. So she did a lot of animations for the game. She's fun to talk to, and I hope you enjoy. The piece itself that you're going to be watching is a piece that I found in my archives that I didn't want to release it before because there's some stuff that has to do with the story. And it isn't even the final version of it. There's like more additions that I made to it after the fact for marketing materials. And it ended up becoming a really nice piece that's going to go into the art book. So yeah, that's right. I'm working on a second art book. That is, I suppose I'm announcing that right now. For those of you who don't know, The Twilight Monk is going to be released on Switch and PC on Steam on March 26th. 2025. So that's right around the corner. It should be like less than a week away for you if you're watching this when it comes out. So enjoy the conversation. I had a lot of fun talking with Amy. We had a lot to say. We also talk a little bit about some of our favorite retro games towards the end of the video, as we tend to do. This is a team that loves retro games. So enjoy, and I'd love to hear your comments and questions that you might have. Leave those in the comments below. All right, let's dig into it. Once a year I can have cheese on my birthday. That's the only day.
Cheese is my snack. If I couldn't eat cheese, I'd just perish quietly in the corner.
Well, that's the interesting thing is that you are speaking to a perished man.
Oh no.
Yeah, because I was that way my whole life. I would just eat string cheese. I would eat. My favorite food in the world is nachos and pizza.
Oh right.
And I can't have really either. You know.
I can't eat I can't eat stuff that is too much of one flavor.
What do you mean
But
by
like
that?
cheese, so like I can't eat like a burger because there's too much bread. And then I couldn't eat pizza because there's too much bread. I just taste a ton of bread and then I get flavor fatigue from it, so I don't eat that kind of stuff much.
So you need like a plate with 5 different flavors, like beans separated by, that can't be connected into one flavor. It has to be like distinctly, like you need a 5-course meal basically every time you eat.
Yeah, but weirdly, I can eat any type of potato as an entire dish by itself. So potatoes apparently are fine, but other stuff is not.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
I'm trying to remember what they're called now. The octopus balls that you get from Japan. I forgot what they're called. They fry them.
Teppanyaki? No, what is it? Is it teppanyaki? What is that called? That's a good question.
Takoyaki?
Takoyaki? I think that
I
is
don't
it.
remember
Yeah.
if it's... Yeah, it might be. Yeah. They had like a festival thingy of different foods in Australia when we went for a walk, and they're just like right next to a hangi place. So we're just like, okay, we'll buy hangi and we'll buy the octopus.
What's hangi?
Hangi is a New Zealand thing, so Māori would typically like bury their food on top of hot coals and cook it that way.
That's interesting that
So it's
so many
lovely.
so many cultures have like this thing where they like bury food. Like kimchi is buried in a pot for like a week.
I guess to be fair though, it's because like the earth kind of keeps the temperature, and
Yeah.
it's like having a weird natural oven.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Native Americans or even just early man would like bury meats. I think it's like cover it in salt. Works.
Makes sense.
Works. You just got to get that dirt flavor out. Maybe that's the problem. We're not eating enough dirt. That's why everybody has health issues. Do you want to start the podcast? Technically, we already started. Today we're sitting down with Amy Summers. She's the animator on Twilight Monk. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. We're going to be talking about favorite foods. We're going to be we're going to be talking about game development. We're going to be talking about animation. We're going to be talking about self-taught artists, being the challenges of being a self-taught artist. I've known Amy for quite some time. I would say, gosh, how long have we known each other now? 10, 12 years?
Oh god, it feels like that. I can't even remember. I just remember like messaging you one day and you're just like, oh cool, I guess we're friends now.
Yeah, no, you did. You know what it was? You wore me down. I'm such a sucker for when somebody does fan art of my characters.
It's a mood.
In a way, I felt like I feel like you kind of cheated your way into friendship with me. It's like, that's the way it is. Like, do fan art of Twilight Monk, and yeah, and then after that, and I think well, it was also really cool that you were talking very highly about Twilight Monk to a lot of the people that were following you, and then suddenly all these people were coming over and checking out my YouTube channel, and I thought you were really generous. This was the biggest thing I got from you. Is like you were very generous. You did fan art of not just my stuff, but you were doing fan art of a lot of other people's art and their characters, and you seem to have this like boundless energy, this boundless like sort of enthusiasm, and I'm always drawn to that. You know.
Oh, that's still there. It's just now it's stuck on like I'll spend a month on one project and it's just like why did I do this?
Wait, on a fan project or just on your own thing?
Oh, my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent like the last so many hours trying to draw a library.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to detail every shelf had to be different.
Did you name every book?
I made most of the books look different and then they also
Yeah.
some of them are aged too because you know that's a thing.
Let's dig in a little bit on where that comes from. Do you remember, because we've had conversations before, to give people context. Amy's been on my YouTube channel it's a couple of times. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
Once?
I think
Twice.
was it like twice?
No.
I know you did crit if one of my pieces once, and that made my art go from I don't want to talk about it to a lot better.
I've heard that I
thank you
give
for
good
that.
critiques. I've
You
heard.
do, yes.
There's been a couple of people, honestly, it's weird because I should probably just do that for a living, because there's been a couple of people that I've done paint overs of their work and then they went from not getting any work to suddenly they're pro. Like immediately after. They just started applying those. But it's so essential that you actually apply the things. You were always this way where you were very analytical. And I remember you sent me a book one time that was like, this is a documentation of my own progress. Here's the things I learned this year. Do you still do those little booklets?
Oh, no, I don't as much anymore. I think it's because I went from doing that stuff to like the bigger world building projects, which
Yeah.
realistically are better for my multiple skill sets instead
Uh-huh.
of just the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me because I think that you have it built into your personality to be very analytical. You look at like how something is done and then you're applying it to yourself. You're contextualizing it within the framework of what you already know. And then it almost like that, those particular things that you showed me where it was like very, very quantifiable. Like, oh, this is how light works. This is how I used to do light. This is how I do lighting now. This is how I used to do like character standing. This is how I pose characters now. And there's a sort of a distinctive, like it's so hard when somebody's trying to grow, they usually can't identify in their own work what's sort of missing. And I think it might also have to do with like you're part of art communities, right? You're sharing interactions, a lot of experiences interacting with other artists. You're drawing over, I don't know, do you draw over other artist stuff all the time, or are you in a specific community?
Sometimes. Yeah, so sometimes we'll draw over other artists' work, but I think because my community is typically a little bit younger, we try not to give too much heavy crit like
Mm-hmm.
right off the bat unless like they're really excited for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know obviously like 90% of the people that have like come and go from my stuff are completely self-taught,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to grow a certain level of skin for crit, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you've got a certain level of pride, and if your crit goes over the top of your pride, then you won't accept it and you won't learn.
Yeah.
So we had to start sandwiching. So you tell them what they're good at, and then you give them some crit, and then you put something else they're good at. And then I realized when I was doing stuff like that all the time, I'm like, oh, nobody ever tells me what I'm doing good. Like when they give crit, like ever, which is terrible because I stopped doing some of the things that were good in my work. So you watch somebody go backwards every now and then because they think something that they were doing really well, it never got any crit or feedback or anything. So they're like, well, it must not be very good then. So you just watch them go backwards and change it. It's just like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Like, no, it's also fine.
Yeah, that's true, huh? And I think certainly with especially with beginner artists, you're still trying to like they're trying to find how much encouragement versus how much actual truth they need to hear at that time, right?
Yeah.
And so that is a difficult balancing act too, yeah. And you also do YouTube as well, right? So you probably relate to this, but if you do too beginner of stuff, then people who need like hardcore truths, they tune out, and
Yeah, they do.
then if you do something that's very like hardcore truth, all those beginners, they tune out. So it's a difficult balancing act of accepting, hardcore criticism or truth or being able to hear, oh, these are the things I'm doing wrong. And if I could get past my own self sort of ego, I guess, in the general sense, like your own attachment to the value of your work as being if you can get past that and just go, well, what do I need to hear? Like, what do I actually need to work on here? Some people have that like really built in. It doesn't affect them too much to hear, oh, wow, this part could be better, that part could be better. But I also know what you mean. If it's all just criticism, you start to doubt everything.
Yeah. That can really hit your mental health like really badly. And I mean,
Yeah.
like, I've been in teams before where the crit you get just it ruins art for you in a sense because it makes no sense. So it's just like if you get vague crit, like, oh, make it cuter or do this with it, it's just like, and to the point where you don't actually know how to proceed, then eventually obviously you're just racking your brains trying to answer a question that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And and it was so nice when working on Twilight Monk because obviously I was given a certain level of freedom to do stuff, and I also got crit when it was definitely required. So if I didn't know what to do for something, I'd put we're just talking a call, and then someone would give me an idea for it. It's just like, oh, thank God, because I could not think of anything. And you definitely have like that, like 1 or 2 days where it's just like, oh, you can do anything with this. That's too broad, right? So you need to squish the scope all the way down until you've got like 3 things you can choose from. Because at least then it's like, oh, well, I don't know, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, I've picked one. I'll just make that.
Yeah. Well, it was
Yeah.
it was difficult also because I felt that too, where I was like, man, I really want to give more guidance to Amy, but at the same time, there were times when I gave you like a keyframe, and honestly, it wasn't the best keyframe because I was so overwhelmed with all the other things I had to do that I wasn't actually giving the most effective. I've had to wear multiple hats, director and art manager on this, and it was really difficult to switch hats. So on top of all the businessy stuff I had to do, with producing,
I mean,
structuring the milestones and all that. I don't need to go into it. Just that it was overwhelming. So it was really hard to give my full attention to being a good, like, art director, I guess you'd say.
no, it makes sense though as well because like sometimes you'd give me a keyframe and I mean I'd adjust it if it didn't really work with what I thought worked better anyway.
Yeah.
But like every now and then we'd have uh oh my God, I always lose my train of thought when I'm in the middle of a sentence. Um I had like the same problem every now and then. So like we'd get close to some level of deadline, or we'd add a bunch of tasks for stuff, and suddenly you've got to like race through all of these animations and things that you're not really sure if it's perfect or not, but it's just like you don't have time to care. So you just make it as good as possible in the allotted time you've given yourself to do it, and then immediately move to the next one.
Yeah, because you were also at one point you were just getting inundated with, here's a list of, 15 monsters, and each of them has like 5 animations. And I
I
found,
remember that. God.
and I found like this is one of the beautiful things about working with somebody for a good chunk of time is that you begin to find how they operate best. And I started to realize you operate best when there's a moderately large amount of stuff on your plate, but if it gets over a certain amount, that's when you start
Oh,
to
then I'll
like
panic. Yeah.
then we get the panic animation, and that's when you're getting the feedback.
Yeah. When there's not too much to do, it's just like, oh, I guess I'll spend like a lot of time on this one animation
Yeah.
just because you got the extra time for it. But when you've got like a task set that's like decently long, it's just like, okay, well, I can now adjust my time to be like, I don't know, just split it between all of these. And then you know if one thing's going to take like ages and then one of them takes like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
So,
you can
yeah.
tell.
Anytime,
Yeah.
yeah. I loved effect animation because it's just like, Amy, can you make an effect? Effect is done in like 30 minutes.
Yeah. And we did try to do that because we don't really have a visual effects artist on the project. So wherever we needed a visual effect, it was like, well, could we get Amy to just animate something? Because that just, it ends up feeling more hand drawn anyway, which I think is a better look than a
Yeah.
particle. Although ideally, we'd have a combination of both. I think great visual effects artists are also good animators.
Oh, I do love like when you see some like you've seen so many really nice visual effect artists on social media.
Oh yeah.
Because I've gone through a bad habit of just following every other skill set that I can't do, so I can just oogle all of them.
Yeah, no,
You
these
know?
days it's weird because you see so many incredible. Like I subscribe to a lot of people that do these sort of low poly, stylized, kind of almost PS2 kind of
Oh yeah,
level of polygons with like really hand painted textures, and I'm so in love with doing that, and I'd love to do more of that myself. But the project that we're on and the kind of amount of work that goes into those things is a little staggering for me. So, but I love looking at it. It's super inspiring, and I love these little cutaways that people will do on ArtStation where you can like kind of look through the 3D space of it.
oh yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, there's so many artists that I want to hire, basically, but I don't know if I could get them because in some cases, I think a lot of people, they found that if they just love doing visual effects or if they just love doing 3D models, they don't need a job. They can just make a living kind of posting them on social media or from,
I
YouTube
mean,
or whatever.
I know that there's like you kind of get like a good and a bad side of that though.
I
So
know.
like depending on the person, right? So because I post stuff on social media and like I have access to do that on a few different platforms,
Hmm.
but the comfort of having a paycheck that's always the same
Yeah.
is so much nicer for your mental health,
Hmm.
right? And it's like when it's finished, it's like, oh, I can go and like do my own project after work.
Yeah.
Like it's that's it. There's nothing else. But if it's social media and that's all you've got, there's so much extra stress because you've got to be your own PR manager and you've got to do all your own marketing constantly and
Yeah.
and like
Oh,
depending on what project you're doing as well, sometimes you can't keep up with like the flow of how quick stuff has to be.
that, and then also you find that the content that you're creating just starts to appease the algorithm or what people are clicking on. And then you're just chasing after that. And before you know it, it's just like a job.
Yeah,
And
it's become a job.
but with unpredictable paycheck.
I feel like I've gone like the other way. Like when I first got like a freelance job, so that I was just like, oh, there's a steady paycheck, and I didn't have to worry about social media as much. I kind of realized that I like being like a stage manager in the back of a play where you've got the option to like make the play happen and all the pretty things happen. But I don't want people to know I'm there. I'm just like, just look at the pretty thing. I'm just making sure it's not broken.
You want to be the puppet master. Yes.
Oh yeah, I think what was it? I made so like I have a silly little persona that I use online, and it's basically like a really simple rabbit with
Hmm.
like It's extremely simple, and the idea was I wanted people to just look at that, then look at everything else, and be more interested with the everything else. So I'm just kind of there talking a little bit, and it's like, look at the shiny things, look, characters with big muscles.
Yeah.
That look over there, you know. So I get to do the the quiet puppeteering while sending them in a different direction.
Oh, yeah, I've never really talked much about it, but I wish. See, I got my start in art building my name in comic books, so my real name was attached to me as my brand since I was 16. So I never really got to sort of be the man behind the curtain, you know, like I never got to build a
Yeah.
persona. But I've always really liked how, like Shiro Masamune, you know who that is, right? The Ghost in the Shell creator.
Oh,
Nobody
yep.
knows who he is, what he looks like, or what his real name is, and every time you see him or a profile of the author, it's like a little squid or a little octopus. So nobody knows who he is. It could be five people all
Yeah.
signing their work under one name. I have a theory that Eiichiro Oda is not a real person because I don't know how it's humanly possible for somebody to draw as much as the One Piece creator. I believe, and you also never know what he looks like either. It's about the work, right?
No, to be honest, I appreciate that a lot of manga kind of just don't they don't ever go in the spotlight. Like they've
Yeah,
always kept themselves quite hidden, and I think it's just because they got the love for actually making the thing.
yeah.
I do love that, like the Hunter x Hunter one. For like a long time, anytime one of their favorite IPs come out, you just see that their manga would go on hiatus.
Oh yeah, of course. And that's the way to do it. You got to live, man. You got to like do what you love, and if that means you put your work down for a little bit, you do it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, we could. You can't do that during game dev. If you did that
No.
during game dev, you just got to watch the project crumble because you've got to. The amount of work you've got then to catch up on is ridiculous.
Oh well, right now, like technically speaking, all the artwork for Twilight Monk is done. So right now, I'm chipping away at like secret next possible projects. I'm doing air quotes because nothing's confirmed. But while I'm doing that, which is really not full time, I'm doing a lot of like creating trailers and doing Twilight Monk art, promotional art. But for the most part, this is my game catch up time. We're between projects.
That's really nice. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm finally digging into those JRPGs that I never finished, like Dragon Quest, and just really giving it my time. Now, might as well.
I feel like such a nerd in comparison because like the moment I stopped doing like main work on Twilight Monk, I'm just like, okay, time to pull up about 4 new projects to immediately start working on, and then I haven't stopped.
Would you say that Twilight Monk is a? I mean, you kind of implied it. You see it more as a comedy than anything else.
I see it as a light-hearted comedy
Okay.
adventure, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, because you can't have everything be light-hearted, but like, so you'll get like little bits of, especially since obviously your lore is quite deep for the world overall.
Hmm.
So you can't just go into a thing that's just like, oh yeah, there's been some destruction here, it's just like, but we're all happy, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's there's obviously like sad events and stuff, and if you've got a place that's in ruin, then obviously it wasn't all jovial all the
Hmm.
time there.
Hmm.
But like the interactions you see between most characters, especially with Raz, tends to be a little bit more like upbeat.
Hmm.
So you don't typically feel like if I was to see him upset, it would hit very different because he's not typically one that feels like he would get like upset to the point where he would be near tears, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
Yeah, he
No.
feels like somebody who's just normally like in either maybe angry or like kind of happy or smug
Mm.
kind of range. So the moment you see him delve outside of any of those, it would kind of throw you for a loop, which is a great way to shock an audience if you wanted to, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, in
But at
his
the same
current
time, if you,
age. Yeah.
yeah, but if you did it too much, then it just makes people get really confused about what a character is about.
Yeah, he had a very sad childhood in the prequel novels, but and he was a lot more emo back then. But you kind of see why he becomes the way he is. He's not going to let himself make excuses for himself anymore. He's a doer for sure, And
Yeah.
being a doer, you can't let yourself talk yourself out of things. You do. You just go. And that he found a kind of a purpose. And so while he has doubts about himself, and certainly like I agree with you, when he is faced with something that's very personal, like a very personal loss, which is, there's some stories I really want to do in the future that involve that, but they may suit themselves better for a novel than a game. With a game,
Yeah.
I think the mood and like I definitely wanted to avoid the kind of tone of something that's, dark and gritty, even though there's dark and gritty stuff. It's usually like almost, I think the writing reflects the art style of the game, which is at times like adorably cute and playful, but also has a sort of a sinister undertone, a dark undertone to it. And
Yeah.
I think that's consistent with the visual look of it and the writing of the character. But there's also, they're not dealing with like, heavy themes like vengeance or anything like that. I mean, to some degree, but it's very surface level. It's very light in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite characters that you animated throughout the development of Twilight Monk?
Funnily enough, it's Nora. Her
What?
reading yeah, I liked her reading the book, and because of her poofy like pigtails, like just because anytime she moved, her poofy pigtails would have to move, and it's
Yeah.
just fun to animate something that's poofy.
That's a surprise to me. I know there were certainly characters
Yeah.
that you dreaded animating because of the level of detail.
Oh God, Chutar.
Oh
It
my
just
gosh,
popped
yeah.
up. It just popped up. And I'm like, how do I do this? Matt, help me, please.
He was very tricky. He's also using weird tech too, where his neck is on like
Yeah,
a spine.
yeah, that was a whole kerfuffle because what was this? His head was animated separately from the body, and then the body had its own animations, and then the neck was in pieces, which I can't remember if I gave them an idle animation as well.
Yeah, he does. I believe he does have but he has two poses he does because
Oh yeah,
he drops his head down to fire this fireball or fire blast like a beam, and yeah, while his head is down, his whole body is animated in a different position. People might not realize like if you have a character that's very large and has a lot of details such as like many armor pieces or pattern on their clothes, these things all really add up. So to give people an idea, if you've played the game and you've gotten to the dragon on the rooftop of the Sky Fortress, that's Chutar, and he took over a month for you to animate. He was the biggest animation project in the game, right?
I think so. It was between there was a couple of really big ones, and I remember
Vashti
Gazer
was big. Yeah. Vashti
Yeah.
the Gazer Beast. But he's amazing. I'm so glad that we got all those things in there. And I love the fight itself. Matt did such a bang up job with the
He
fight
did
itself.
really. It was really, really good. There were so many like things. I think it got to a point where I'm just like, do I make the eyes blink? But there's so many eyes, so
Yeah.
I think we opted not to.
Yeah,
I
that
can't
would have been a bit
remember.
much. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
also, if you have them blinking and then they get interrupted before he does the next move, yeah.
he'd look weird.
He became our gold standard in the beginning, though. He was the first boss that you animated, right?
Yes, I think like
Yeah.
the first main storyline boss. I think.
Yeah. And you actually came into the project. We were already in development for a few months.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got very excited. It was like my Christmas present. I got asked to join a project. I'm just literally like the week prior, I was just like telling my partner, I'm like, oh man, I want to work on like a cool project with some cool people. That's all I want. And then like a week later, I just got sent this email by you. I'm like, oh my God, I just got what I wanted. It's like,
That's
yeah,
the universe, just lining things up for you.
it was very
And
nice.
I was also really happy that we were able to get Andy to do some voice acting. For the audience, they might not realize that Andy, what is his last name? Or what is his
Cowley.
stage name? Does he go by Andy Cowley?
Yeah, he goes by Andy Cowley.
Yeah, and he does voice acting for a number of anime projects and YouTube shows. What are some things that people would know him from?
If anyone's played Ghost Runner 2,
Mm.
he was in that. He was, I think it was like Raul or something. No, it started with R. I forget what it was, but he's like this robot guy, and it's to be honest, it's really cool when you actually get to his bit. So he did that one, and then there was a game that came out called Dude Stop, and he was all of the voice work in that one.
Well, he
The
did
ent-
a lot of voices for Twilight Monk too, even though we don't have full
yeah,
voice. We just have kind of like sound cues. What do you call that? Is it just sound cues or emotes or
I have no idea.
I don't know what the terminology is, but whatever the case, it's just like when you walk up to a character and they'll go, ah, or hey there. Yeah, little things like that. And you did a voice as well, right?
I did, yeah. You got just sat there really awkwardly trying to do mine.
Which voice did you do? Which character?
I did the Iroko minions.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, they're not in yet.
Yeah, I just
Matt's
made
still
silly
implementing them.
sounds,
That's,
so
yeah, me too. Yeah. But yeah, I
uh,
wanted to make sure. Is that the only one that you were able to do?
yeah, that was the only one I did, mostly because of self-confidence issues when it comes to voice work.
Well, that's because your husband is a. I mean, he does that professionally, right? So
Oh yeah. I mean I'm surrounded by professional
yeah.
voice actors like all the time.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's not always great for my own self-confidence when I'm giving it a go because I'm just like, okay, yeah, no, I know everything that is wrong with it, but I also don't want to hear my own voice. Like nobody
Yeah.
wants to hear their own voice. It's just it sounds annoying. So
That's not
so of course
true.
like
I love the sound of my voice.
really?
I love the sound of my voice.
Oh.
I could listen to myself talk for hours and hours and hours. Why do you think I started a podcast?
I mean, I know Andy said that he could listen to you for ages. He loves your voice and
He
like
did
how you
say he
used to
copied my
start.
voice for one of his roles.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like how you used to start all your videos. I don't remember if you still do it the exact same
I
way,
started
but that
bringing it
was his
back.
favorite thing.
And my
It was
dudes.
yeah, that was like his favorite thing.
Yeah.
He kept mimicking it around the house.
Yeah, I brought it back because people were like, "Dude, you don't say." And then I think it was the end of the second podcast. Anthony, I had him on, and out of nowhere, he's like, "I was like, oh well, that's the end of the episode. Did you want to say anything else?" He goes, "Yeah, there's just one thing." He goes, "You mind if I sign us off there?" And then he goes, "Yeah, but doobie." I don't know what he said, but he was like trying to do one of my old.
Oh,
It's all in good fun. I used to end my videos with this kind of ridiculous "Get your manyan de ban chow baby, oh yeah," and
yep,
just
I remember.
yeah. And he said that was when he subscribed to me and why he wanted to. He's like, "That's why I wanted to be your friend because the way you ended your videos."
You know, that checks out.
Yeah,
That totally feels like something that people would do, right? Like
yeah,
it's like when you're at school and you see someone do something cool and you're just like, I have to befriend this person. Like they have to come over to my birthday parties.
yes. I want to hang out with this person. Yeah. Could you tell people a little bit more about your process and like why did you get into animation? What is the like? What did you look at a lot? Were there inspirations, specific inspirations while developing Twilight Monk?
Oh, I remember there was like a downward attack animation that I did and I
Hmm.
put impact frames on it. God, I was so excited because I was watching like I can't remember if I was just watching like One Punch Man and TMNT AMVs on YouTube
Hmm.
and just kept putting impact frames on stuff. So I was just sitting there like, I need to do an impact frame on something.
Tell the audience what is an impact frame.
Okay, so an impact frame, I guess like the most basic way of putting it is when you use strong shadows and like a really strong contrast. Most people just use white and black for it. Um, to basically like just create a silhouette and some really cool effect lines. Sometimes it'll take up the entire screen, but the whole point is it basically is short enough where it shocks the system to feel like so your brain is impacted basically.
It's a
Your eyes look
flash.
at it. Yeah, your eyes look at it and you can't quite understand what just happened. So of course it feels like it just went like boom,
Mm,
which is fantastic.
yeah.
Um, So it's harder to do when you can't just fill the screen with white, but you also don't want to casually like blind somebody. So I feel like they do have to be done like in a very tasteful manner, or at least done very smartly, which can be a pain in the ass. But because I was doing it for Raz, he can't have the whole screen turn white when he hits the floor. That's just not allowed. It'd be a pain in the ass to code, and it would probably look awful if you were doing it frequently. Yeah, so for his one, I think I just used like really solid frames. So there was one where I think most of him was black and every effect around him was nearly white. It was either green, like that light green color we used, or like mixed with white around it, I think, which kind of made it pop. But it looked really nice. That was like one of the ones I was like genuinely just super proud of. Yeah, I was gonna say I think most in like inspirations at the time was just I watched so many different shows. So one minute I'll go through like just a cutesy cartoon like Bluey, which realistically is not the best for animation study. There's a couple of instances where it's really like really nice and smooth, but not the day to day. And then another day I'll be watching like One Punch Man, which is just nothing but action shots by artists who were having a great time. Or Freerin, which is very smooth, very mundane movements, which is like very, very nice. So, like you just swap between random bits and bobs. So it's one of those things that you start to sort of get like, I don't know, like hyper aware of your own actions. There was a point where I can't remember whose animation it was for. It was one of the bosses, Cyclone Denosa.
Cyclone Denosa and Cartouche the Arrow.
Yes.
Memorable names, yes.
Yeah, so I was animating the big guy, and of course, like, I was just like, well, how does he walk? So I ended up getting my partner and me, and we were both trying to mimic how this guy should walk. And, like, like, everything I did, he was going too fast. Right? Because he's supposed to walk slowly when he wasn't like charging at you. So I'm just like, okay, well, how does that work? So I just watching my partner because he's a bit of a like he's a much bigger, broader shouldered guy. I'm tiny, piddly, so it doesn't really work for me. But yeah, I was just watching him do stuff, and then anytime he moved for one of the bigger characters that I needed to animate, I'm just like, can you just do this motion for me like twice, and then I'll go and animate it.
Yeah, those two turned out really nice. And then also Cyclone Denosa does this like portal appearance, and I think there's just the way that the portal, some of your effects were just so incredible. My favorite animations that you did are like animations, there's one that isn't in the game yet, but the explosions. So when the bomb blows up is really beautiful. The poison bottle explosion, that kind of forms into a skull, is just
those
really charming.
Those
really
are so nice. Like to animate as well, they're just really nice because like with other animations, you got to think about how it's like looping to the next frame. Those ones don't. They peter out. So I could just animate like however I wanted, so long as it fit within the frame limit. Because I don't know if you've told people that we had a frame limit, right? So like. We couldn't realistically go over 16 frames for like most of the animations. I think there was like once or twice we went over the top of that. Like for when Raz dies and the fish come out, that one I think was a bit longer. And there was another one and I don't remember what it was. But like some of those we had to like squash them down to way less frames, which was... God, sometimes it was more awkward as well because then you got like this really chunky feel to something, but you can't do anything about it because if you change it, you got to add extra memory to this one thing, especially if it's not very important, right?
I remember that the overworld animations had to be only like 6 frames or something like that because they're 8 direction movement.
Yeah, I think we got them to 4.
Okay.
4 frames.
Wow.
Each. Yeah.
Yeah, considering that Raz's original idol, before you joined the project, I was using some spine puppet animation, which didn't look particularly great. And that was using, I think, literally like 34 frames or something. People might not realize how many drawings you had to do. And that's part of why the characters are simply drawn. You have to find ways to leave a lot of impact with simple drawings too. Yeah, it's really, really challenging.
I mean, it's kind of fun though. Yeah.
It's good to have restrictions. It's good to have challenges. And if it were completely unlimited, I think we'd have decision paralysis on a lot of things, and we'd probably spend way too much time.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'd still be developing in 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. My second favorite animation is the flaming chicken.
The chicken.
Which he's not in the initial launch. He's going to get patched in. Like I don't know that people know that we're planning to like patch in more content throughout 2025, but yeah, he's this is a character from the novels, and he's just a chicken that when he gets scared or when he gets hit, he explodes into a giant like flaming phoenix type of chicken. But his animations are just so good.
I remember that. I do remember. I think one of the hardest ones to do was the respawn.
Oh yeah.
Animation. Yeah, because we didn't just do the so I did the animation, which had the two fish, and then Raz like slowly disintegrates. But then we had to start splitting some of the frames up into just him disintegrating, I think, because somebody was putting effects on it. Oh god, that was so confusing to me too, because I'd never done anything like that. So it's just like, can you just turn this into a sprite sheet? You can also see him slowly drain in color when that animation hits as well.
Yep.
Yeah, which was a fun. It's nice, to be honest, when you get an animation that fits really well with lore.
Yeah.
To be honest, I would have loved more bits for that, but sometimes we did literally just get like stuck right against the edge of a thing, because unfortunately sometimes the animation side of things became a bottleneck for the programmers, because you can't finish a character or like an enemy until the animation's done, because the timing gets adjusted as well, right? Like I remember I animated one guy and then he kind of minorly pauses between steps because of how big he was. And so, like, of course, if you program him, you just have him slowly sliding across the floor. It looks, no, please. So we had to, I was just sitting there annoying Matt, just like, can you just, yeah, thank you.
But we had some funny solutions that came from those limitations too. Like, for instance, at one point, rather than having every NPC run off screen after they deliver a line, we decided to have some NPCs poof out. And that actually created really interesting scenarios. Like if people are paying attention, whenever Toka sort of poofs out, he actually sneezes. That was your idea. You came up with
yeah.
that.
I just wanted him to sneeze. It just made sense because he was already a bit wacky.
He is a wacky guy.
Yeah,
he's this hermit who's been living up in the mountains alone for 40 years. Yeah.
No, he's my idol. I love this guy.
Yeah, he's great. My wife and I just watched this movie called The Gorge, where this guy gets assigned to this tower overlooking a gorge that's kind of hidden. It's off the radar, and he's supposed to be there alone in this tower for 365 days with nothing but books, food, and like the rain. And I was like, that's awesome. I could do that. Just, let me take my PlayStation. It'll be good.
I love how for some people that's horrible, right? It's just like, oh, I couldn't. No, that's like my worst nightmare. And for the introverts in here, we're just going, that's the life. That's what I want.
Yeah, I just want to get like a tower, no internet, just like a shack in the rainforest. I'm actually thinking about it at some point. I just want to get a little place off the grid, just to go there for like 3 months out of the year. No cell phone, no internet, no nothing. Just write and draw and live like it's 1992. I'll bring some old CDs,
I'd need the internet though sometimes for inspiration.
Nope. Your inspiration comes from walking through the woods.
Oh, you don't understand. I don't like walking.
That's going to be a problem for you.
I'm a real hermit. I live indoors.
My day of exercise is to get up and walk to the bathroom. When I get out of bed in the evening.
Yeah, we take the dog out. That's it. We're done for the day. Problem solved.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's a part of me that just, I think so much of our modern day anxiety is really just from internet. And I actually think we were maybe better off without it.
Sometimes I would agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
And then every now and then I'm like, oh, well, a bunch of my friend group that I've got nowadays, I wouldn't have if I didn't have the internet. So I do
Yeah.
I appreciate what I got. And obviously we wouldn't have met if that was the case.
That's very true. Yeah, and I can't deny that. But there is a kind of so something happened with, like, for instance, I remember in the PS1 days, if you sit down and try to play PS1 games or N64 games right now, they require such patience because our brains were wired to just be patient with the thing we're experiencing at the time. Nowadays, I feel like everything is so quick. There's so many, it's sort of like having too many channels on TV. It's like, well, is there something better on? Is there a better thing I could be doing right now? And so I think that's the source of so much anxiety for humans. It's like, it would be really beneficial for us to slow things down. And that's
yeah.
that's my love of isolation, and my love of sort of being untethered is in that idea that maybe I could develop my patience muscles again a little bit more. My ability to be bored is where so much creativity came from.
Oh, that's totally fair. Because I mean, we've turned on like Netflix or something, and you look at everything on there. It's just like, oh, there's nothing to watch. But there's literally like thousands of shows on there, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing to watch, not at
Yeah.
all. Turn on YouTube, nothing to watch.
Yeah.
You know. And it's the same with you got like a Steam library of probably about 200-300 games,
Or a thousand.
average, and yeah, that you haven't finished, and then you're just like, oh, there's nothing to play. It's just,
Yeah. Well, one
what's
problem I have with games now is, like, as soon as I get one, I'm looking it up on there's a website called howlongtobeat.com.
oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and so I immediately look up how many hours is this going to be, even if and rather than just enjoy the game I just got and shut out new releases and shut out the other games in my to-do list, so to speak, like and this is a problem, because I want to get back to a mental state where I can be fully immersed in the thing that I'm currently doing.
I
Yeah.
mean, you literally called your game list, so something you're supposed to enjoy, you called
Yeah.
it your to-do list.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't get me
I
wrong, I enjoy them, but I am not enjoying them the way I used to in the 90s when I'd get one game and I had to see every freaking room. I had to, like, it was before trophies or achievements, but I felt like I had to try everything. I had to see every inch of that game throughout. And that means unlock every single unlockable. Like GoldenEye, I had to get the Game Shark so that I could get out to the little island off of the dam level just to see the unused areas of the game. Like I wanted fully experience everything that game had to offer. And nowadays, I don't really do that with anything. And partly that's because games are so big now, but it's also
oh yeah.
because of the way that the PlayStation has this, like, media bar, and it's like, oh, you can't just have the one game that you have the disc of it in there. It wants to show you the 5 other games you could be playing at that time.
Oh, I hate that.
Hmm.
I mean, I also find that I feel like games both have more and less in them though as well. Like back when like you used to play like we loved Dark Cloud a lot when I
Oh
was a kid.
yeah, Dark Cloud 2
Dark
is
Cloud
better.
was so yeah, I loved both. Both
Hmm.
were good. Like I liked the charm from the first one, and I liked how you built cities and stuff in it,
Hmm.
or little towns.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
then obviously number two built on it, and then I was sad that I didn't get to play anymore. But like we would go through every tiny little aspect of this, and we originally only found it through a demo we got when we got our PlayStation. So we got like this tiny little disc that you used to get when you got
Hmm.
like a thing, and it would have like a bunch of tiny aspects of games on it.
Yeah.
And so we had 30 minutes of Dark Cloud that you could play, and we would desperately try to get past the point we always got to every time. So we'd play this 30 minutes of this one game,
Yeah.
probably more than we played the actual full version when we got it.
Oh yeah. Oh, I did that with Final Fantasy VII. I got the demo disc, and I had like gotten Aerith up to like level 50. You had a party in the demo, and it still had Aerith and Cloud and Barrett, and you could only go up to the part with the materia generator or whatever it's called, the tower.
Oh, okay.
At
Yeah.
the very beginning, it's just within the Midgar, running up and down that ladder, just leveling up. Yeah, played the hell out of it. The original demo for Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation 1 was all in Japanese.
Wow.
And I played the heck out of it, man, just obsessively. Yeah, I played it probably more than I played the game. No, that's not true. I played Metal Gear Solid 1 probably 50 to 60 times all the way through. Yeah.
Actually, I think it also helped that you couldn't look up guides either. So,
Yeah,
like,
magazines.
nowadays, obviously, like, if I get stuck on a puzzle, I just look it up and then I'll immediately solve the puzzle and that's
Yeah.
it. But, like, we used to have, I think one of the first big games we actually got was Final Fantasy VIII. So Final Fantasy VIII was the first one I ever played. And we didn't know, like, obviously when we finished the game, that you could get a ton of summons. So we just decided to play it again because my brother played it through the first time, so it was my turn. And, I went like a slightly different way. It's just like, oh, there's a thing here. And then we realized it's like, oh, there's a lot of things here that we've just missed the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, but I sucked at the game, so I gave the controller to my brother and I watched while he played the game.
There is a part of me that wants to abandon all new games and just like have a PlayStation and only buy PlayStation 1 games, only play those. Because if as soon as you start to expose yourself to new games, like I know you're a big fan of Octopath Traveler. And
Oh yeah, I like Octopath.
if you start playing that, or a lot of these modern RPGs, like if you play Dragon Quest 12, for example, like you get so spoiled on what games have become. There's so much there. Like you can play for hundreds of hours. But you get acclimated to that, and then it's hard to go back to the slower paced stuff. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It was like the patience. Do you know what I mean?
Funnily enough, I didn't have that problem. So we played Octopath. I think it was just after 2 came out,
Yeah.
and then I kept talking about Final Fantasy VIII. So of course Andy hadn't played it, so of course I made him play it, and we just sat there, and he's just like, "Okay, well this is a very old game." I'm just
Yes.
like, "Yeah, but you don't understand. Like this bit happens, and this guy's my favorite, and the music is nice, even though it sounds crunchy as hell.
Yeah.
It's a good game." And then we'd start going around, and he's like, "Yeah, it is a good game, especially the card mini game. That's great. I want
Yeah.
more like mini games that you just forget the whole game exists and you play the mini game instead."
Did you beat it? Did you play it all the way through?
Oh yeah,
8?
it was really good.
I've never been
Yeah.
able to beat it. I've started it 3 times and I've never been able to beat it. I get all the way up to, there's a part in the game where the whole world sort of gets repopulated with new monsters.
Oh, is it
That's-
on disc 4?
Yeah, I think so. That's the farthest I've ever gotten. I don't know how that
Yeah.
game ends. Yeah. But it's my least favorite Final Fantasy.
Yeah, sadly a lot of people don't like it, but the people who do are like hardcore fans of it because I think they look at it not as like a Final Fantasy game the same way the rest of them were.
Right.
It's treated a little bit differently, and I completely get where people come from on both sides because I have a love for it obviously because it's the first one I played. But I've played like 9, 10 and all the other ones front and back. So I can see where people's complaints are, and I can see where people's love for it is. Like I love 9. 9 is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say that's like the best one. I like
Yeah.
9 and I like 10 a lot. They're like really good games. 10 too is surprisingly a good game.
Nah.
Like fun.
That's
It's
for
fun
girls.
to play.
Come on.
Wait, no, it's not. It's so good. My brother played it. No,
Oh, you get
seriously.
to change your outfits. That's right.
No,
I was like, dudes don't
it
care
was
about that.
weirdly tactically fun.
Was it?
Which was a surprise. Yeah, like the mechanically, it was actually just a really good battle system. So that one was great because it reminded me of like some of the older games, to be honest. But like obviously, 10 was great story wise, for like if you're going for like super feelsy stuff. 9 was great for literally everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think most of the internet cared about 7. And I
Yeah.
felt bad for 8 because 8 was a love story and it was cute. It's just like
You know, I would say the thing that hurts 8 the most is the draw system.
yes, I can see why. Funnily enough, I really liked it,
Mm.
especially if you get into the card system.
Mm. Are they integrated?
Yeah, if you get cards, you can turn them into the stuff you would use from drawers.
Oh, I did
Yeah,
not even
so
know about that. Wow. Okay.
yeah, so a bunch of people found out that you could get OP really quickly by just ditching the main storyline really quick and then going and playing the card game.
Oh, no way. Okay, so maybe if I look up the hacks, I can
Yeah,
race through the game and enjoy it a bit more.
yeah.
The weird thing about those old Final Fantasy games, especially that era, is that they had so many little mini games throughout the whole game. Like I recently tried to replay Final Fantasy VII again after playing the Rebirth game that they did,
Oh,
and
yep, yep.
I didn't realize how much Final Fantasy VII is like. Okay, go to this next town. Okay, now play this mini game where you have to like march with soldiers in time, and okay, now you have to play this other mini game where you're on like a boat and you have to like there's just so many little mini games oh, you're supposed to talk to this one NPC before you can go and progress the story, and there's less of the adventuring through the world and leveling up and all of that stuff, which is really how I remember it. But the reality of playing it is so much more of the like little mini game stuff, or the specific of, oh, you can talk to this one NPC, but there's no indicator as to who that NPC is. You know, just it's just a different way of designing games back then. Yeah.
It's funny though, because I feel like I understand why they did it as well. Because
Hmm.
if you look at like one of the cutscenes there in Final Fantasy IX, which is pretty early on, um, they have two characters fighting each other in a cutscene.
Mm-hmm.
So because you've had just nothing but cutscene for a certain level of time, they made it a one of those reactionary button games. So, like you have to press down to dodge something,
Quick
left,
time
right,
events.
or up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very good at that one. I always like got perfect. So I may be
Humble brag
biased.
there. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I may be biased, but it was nice because it broke up the long wait. Because obviously, like, they couldn't just stop and tell you, like, it's just like, oh, well, this story stuff's happening. And in a lot of games nowadays, you can sit for like 30, 40 minutes in a cutscene
Mm-hmm.
before you even move,
Mm-hmm.
So having a tiny mini game, even if it's within the constraints of a cutscene, was enough for me to not get bored. I would be,
Yeah.
like,
I
yeah,
can see
I
what
was
you
quite
mean.
happy.
Yeah, that is true about Final Fantasy VII. I get very engaged. It's not just going from one random encounter to another. Like there are these quick time events and these story events. You go to the Gold Saucer, then you got to like win at the Chocobo races. Like it is engaging in the sense it demands more of your attention than just wander through the map, get a random encounter. You know.
Yeah, because like Pokemon's great.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially when you're at the start and you've got like a lot to grind and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
once leveling up becomes less common, and once like you've done everything else, you start looking for something that's not the main game to do.
Oh,
So
fill your
like people,
Pokédex. Yeah, 100%
yeah. So it's
Pokédex.
just, or it's just like, oh, that when they used to have the casino that you could go and play at.
Yeah.
So I'd go play the slot machine because it was something different,
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually you do hit a point where it's the same with like why I change my creative endeavor every couple of days. Because if I keep doing the same thing, I get bored.
Yeah.
So a mini game kind of refreshes that gameplay loop enough where your brain is like, oh, well, I'm happy now to just go and continue back where I was.
Yeah.
And if you can merge the two, like that's why I loved 8 so much. The fact that they managed to merge the card game with the battle system made me very happy because it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh, I achieved a lot in this one, which I'm very good at, and now I am no longer dying so much.
Yeah, and I think that we were, even as we were developing Twilight Monk, we were trying to be cognizant of exactly the thing you're talking about, which is like you're not just going from one dungeon to another. There are these like sort of sequences of events, and I'm going to say it as spoiler free as possible. I was almost reluctant to put them in, but Anthony really pushed for it too, where he's like, look, it changes the variety of gameplay of what you're doing. So you're not just going into a dungeon and fighting monsters. You're not just wandering through the overworld and running into random encounters. You're also going through these adventure beats of a story that's happening, and the status of the characters changing, and what's expected of you changes. Sure, there's also things like mini games too that change up the gameplay, so it's not just like the same repetition. Yeah, and as you're especially for an RPG, I feel like that is essential. It's necessary.
Yeah, because you've got like your Butters Hunts, obviously, which is it's a nice it's a nice thing where it feels like a kind of break, but it's not at the same time, because you're gonna perpetually do it while doing anything.
It makes every fight worth more. So no matter where you are in the world, it's like, oh, this is worth something, even if I've already fought these guys a bunch.
Yeah, but if it was the only thing you had, like the same way as if you only had the ability to fill out your Pokédex, eventually you do hit that line of, well, it's kind of the same. So you start to peter out on wanting to do either.
Yeah.
So having something that then changes the entirety of it, makes you a little bit happier to continue.
Yeah, exactly. And then it also fits within the systems of everything that you've been doing as well. It's like, so even if you run into a boss and you get kind of stuck and you're like, I should probably go and find something else to do for a little bit until I level up, get more powerful. It's like, well, I might as well go and fill out my monster book a little bit more, and then I get another talisman, and that could be enough to turn the tide in this next boss fight, for example. And so those systems all integrate together, even though you're creating a little bit of variety, and also forcing you to go back to areas you haven't been, or where you've already been, but you haven't really fully explored.
Yeah, it's a great way of keeping people engaged, because I think one of the, I mean, it's definitely a struggle when trying to do my own game dev stuff, is ways of keeping people interested for a longer period of time. Because obviously you add a bunch of stuff with feature creep by accident. Mm-hmm. But it's then knowing, because you can add a feature, and so say you wanted to add one particular minigame in, if it's the wrong type, it can throw people off the game, Yeah. I'm sure you've probably had it where you've started playing a game of any kind, and they put a minigame that you cannot skip in, and you just hate it. It's the worst part of the game, and you're just like, why is this here? I just don't.
That was actually
I've put games down before.
Yes. Oh, that was the Final Fantasy Rebirth game for me. There was a card game that you're forced to play in order to progress, and it's like, I just want to get back to exploring the world, and it really frustrated me, but I found a way. Once you figure out the card game and you just deal with it on the ship, you have to play the game and win it a certain number of times on the boat. And once you do that, the game really gives you more of what you're actually there for, in my opinion. The card game wasn't something I was there for. So it's sort of forcing me to do it in order to progress was so frustrating to me. So yeah, I definitely, even when doing the mini games in Twilight Monk, I wanted to make sure it's not required that you do that. It's just definitely a benefit if you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there were also 100 mini games I would have loved to have gotten in that just didn't get in. But hey, room for possibly add-ons or more sequel stuff. So I don't know. There's always 1,000,001 things I'd love to do that we just run out of time or money to do. So but that makes it sound like there's a bunch of cut content. That's not the case at all.
To be fair, I think people always take cut content the wrong way, though, because sometimes it's important to cut content, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you I've done it before where you'll write something, for example, so you have a whole paragraph, and then realize that half the paragraph is either just nonsense or it doesn't fit the tone of the second half of the paragraph.
Yeah.
So if you don't cut it, you've ruined the entire tone of one massive chunk.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
Important, yeah. So if we'd kept in because I know
no spoilers.
I know no, I was gonna say I know you and Anthony had a habit of every now and then you'd change dialogue between characters, or you would update or change the layout of something, and it is entirely, it's not or you decide that something did not need to be there. it wasn't because, it wasn't because it wasn't, like, good. It just didn't fit. If you put it in, it would have ruined, like, a different idea that you had that you'd already set as a, yes, we have to have this, right?
Yes. If it's main story, so there's like your main storyline progression, and if you shove too much stuff on there that's mandatory, you can screw up your pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're saying. There was an entire sequence that was cut, another level that was cut because it would have been a really awesome set piece, but it was too much of something similar back to back to back to back, and we needed to change up the pacing of it. So yeah, it had to be cut. And it's not that,
also budgets.
There's that too. And we already, like, talking about cutting things, well, we added a whole chapter to the game. That's such an essential chapter to the game. And it's just, when you get to the last part of the game, it's the most satisfying RPG Metroidvania that I've ever played. Even as a developer, I can say that, totally unbiased. As a player, I could say that. Because, and it gives you so much freedom. But it wasn't part of our contract. It wasn't something that was in the original plan. It came about because we realized that's an essential sort of a trope and an important part of what makes a Metroidvania satisfying is to be able to just rip through enemies with all these new abilities that you've acquired throughout the whole game towards the end, just collecting all the last little bits that the world has to offer. And without that, I don't feel like it's as satisfying. So that's a case where, yes, we cut like some small things from earlier in the game so that we could put the big payoff in there, And that's a difficult decision to make always, but ultimately it is the best decision. We'll see what people say about it when they play the final game. But we should wrap it up pretty soon here. We've been talking for a little while. Was there so what you say that you're working on some of your personal projects right now? Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you wanted to share with people about, like, where can people find you on X, or I know you do some streaming still. Lay it on people where they can follow you.
I'd say streaming is probably the most common place to find me,
Cool.
which is Bin of Trash on Twitch.
Bin of Trash on Twitch. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a trash can. It's fine. Everything I look, it means nobody can insult me, man. I'm already trash. It's problem solved.
Nah, you got to change it to Bin of Gold. Are you going to stream Twilight Monk when it comes out?
Yes, I'm gonna give it a go.
You and Andy, or just you?
I might end up just giving him the controller because I'm really bad at these games.
Yeah, no, I think you'll do.
That never changed.
You'll do pretty well. It's designed to be not too crazy difficult.
I was playing it like during testing and stuff, and I the furthest I could get was before Chutar.
That's the demo, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't beat Chutar. I just got so I'm not very good at multitasking in a game sometimes. So I just sat there and kept dying, and I was like, I'm gonna take a break.
Well, that's the thing. If you get stuck, you can just go back and level up, and then you can take them out in fewer hits.
That was most of my playtime, was me going back and just casually exploring somewhere and murdering stuff so that it wouldn't be as hard. I think I spent like about 4 hours on Dinosaur.
Wow. Wow.
I'm not.
Yeah, he could be brilliant.
That's why. Yeah. See, I told you when I say that I'm not very good, I mean that I'm not very good. So I'm sure people will enjoy watching me play the game for like the start bit for the first 5-6 hours of stream.
Well, that's the first skill check, so I expected a lot of players would run into some challenge with them, but I would love to watch you play it. So make sure you tweet that out when you are going to be playing it. Are you going to play it at launch, or are you going to wait a little bit?
I'll probably play it on launch.
Yeah, nice. Which will be March 26th, 2025. There's been some confusion about that release date.
Yay.
I know, but we got it right this time. It's March 26th, 2025. That'll be available on the Nintendo Switch eShop and on Steam for PC. I also want to mention that you can check out the playlist here for these podcasts if you're interested in hearing from the entire Twilight Monk development team. If you're watching on my YouTube channel, remember I post a couple of times a week with more updates behind the scenes on the development of Twilight Monk. So yeah, come check it out. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.